pleased to nominate Pacifico M. DeCapua Jr. to the position of Associate Justice of the District Court. I submit this nomination for the advice and consent of the Executive Council pursuant to Part 2, Chapter 2 of the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I'm enclosing the nominee's resume for your convenience. Sincerely, Charles D. Baker. And with that, we have two witnesses here today on your behalf. If you could, the Honorable Robert Calgione, if you'd like to start us. Did I do good with Calgione? Okay.
Well, morning.
Good morning, Judge.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. You want to
If
proceed?
you have a statement, please proceed. Yeah.
Sure. All right. Again, good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the council. I am delighted to be here today to speak on behalf of Attorney DeCapua's nomination to the district court. This is such a memorable day for him and his family, and having gone through this, thank you very much, and having gone through this myself some 20 years ago, it is a day that remains with you forever. The nominee's CV speaks for itself. His years of experience on both the criminal and civil side, I believe, is a great beginning for a district court judge. He has appeared before me on numerous occasions in the Milford District Court in both criminal and civil matters. When I was on the road in courts with jury sessions, he tried cases before me. In all instances, Attorney DeCapua was fully prepared and represented his client zealously. His presentation of the issues was well-versed and succinct, which is always appreciated in a busy court session. When I was sworn in as a judge, a very wise attorney who I practiced with gave me a plaque inscribed with a quote from Socrates. 4 things belong to a judge: to hear courteously, to answer wisely, to consider soberly, and to decide impartially. I hung the plaque on the door leading from my lobby to the courtroom, and I read it every time before taking the bench. These things are the essence of being a good judge, and despite some days that were particularly trying, if they are followed, they will lead to a successful career as a jurist. I believe that in his life and his law practice, Attorney DeCapua possesses these attributes, which will serve him well as a district court judge. A judge who is long retired took me aside one day and told me that as a judge, you must be firm, but fair, and even more importantly, you must have a heart. This is not always an easy task, whether dealing with a difficult pro se litigant or parties on a contentious restraining order. A good judge will control the process while assuring that the parties have an opportunity to have their story told. Anything less is a failure. Again, I believe that Attorney DeCapua possesses the compassion and understanding to conduct himself in this manner. I came to this conclusion through my interactions with him both personally and as an attorney practicing before me. I read an interview recently with Chief Justice Budd in the current edition of the Boston Magazine, when she answered a question about process before the court. She responded that as judges, our top priority is getting the case right. She continued, it's all about getting the case right. And in that response, she defines, in my opinion, what the job is all about. It is not about ego or being overbearing. It is hearing the evidence, determining the facts, applying the law to the facts, and making the decision. I have full confidence that the confirmation of Attorney DeCapua's nomination will result in his long and successful career as a district court judge, and I endorse his candidacy without qualification. Thank you for the opportunity to be before you and your courtesy in this matter.
Thank you very much. Comments from the council? Yes.
Judge, it was good to see you.
Nice to see
You
you.
good luck in your retirement.
Thank you.
I didn't get in front of you a lot, but I did occasionally. You were always very, very nice to me and very professional. I appreciate it.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thanks.
The councilors, Council Jumbo?
Judge, good to see you. I echo Councilor Kennedy's remarks and just say that it was always a pleasure. When we lawyers walk into courtrooms, we look to see who the judge is. Sometimes we go, oh, that's a real good guy here, fair, decent. Or sometimes we go, it's going to be a bad day today. We're never one of those judges.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Councilor Devaney?
To see you.
20 years ago.
Right. Yeah, no, I know.
Finest boats. You've always made me proud. Now, why don't you tell us what you know about the nominee?
Sure.
We know your service. You've done a wonderful
Sure.
job. Thank you. Tell me, you haven't come, you haven't.
No, I've been back 2 times, I think, with Judge Eustace, Brian St. Ange, who's a court magistrate in
Yeah.
Palmer.
Right, those are two good people.
Yeah.
So tell me, you really, you wanted to come to speak for him,
Yeah.
and all these 20 years, we haven't seen you every time. What is it that you see that, that he is going to be? Him? How many times have you seen him in court? Tell us about it.
Well, I've probably known him all his life. I'm just a couple of years old. But in any event, he appeared before me frequently as a local attorney, criminal cases, civil cases, summary process cases. And what was striking about Skip is that he was always prepared, which a judge appreciates. So, you've got all these people in front of you, you want to get through your session. And one of the most fantastic people to deal with in that there was never any time wasted. And the manner in which he represented his clients, he represented them zealously. He was always polite, never overbearing. Here's to have him before me.
Well, I gotta tell you, I'm not trying to butter you up, you don't look much different than.
Oh, I really appreciate it.
I'm telling you, I really, the time has been on your side. So I hope you're enjoying retirement. You certainly have deserved it. I'm trying hard to change that 70, but there's no one out there that will do it. I can't, I don't have the authority, and it's outrageous.
Well,
I mean, it doesn't make sense that you are forced to retire at 70, but then they call you back at 75 to be a recall judge.
well, I know there's a few that are coming around, but I was asked, and I said, no, I think that's it. It's that age, and so.
Really? Well, we miss you. Thank you very much. Your testimony means a lot.
Thank you. Any other comments? Thank you so much for being here. Your testimony means a lot.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And now we have Attorney and State Representative Brian Murray.
Mr. Chairman, councilors, thank you for allowing me to come and testify about good friend Attorney Pacifico DeCapua. I have known him really my entire life. So my dad started practicing law in 1940, went in with his father who opened the law office in 1910. And in 1960, Attorney DeCapua's father out of law school came in with my father. So we were raised by attorneys, raised in the legal system. And I stayed with my father's practice. Attorney DeCapua went off on his own, but that influence was there. And the attorneys that our fathers were the old-time, small-town attorneys. Families would come to them when their son had an accident, or maybe the father had fallen down, or if they wanted wills done, there was always the family attorney. Clients to our parents were not customers of a business. We were more of an extension of their family. And when you practice like that, you get a real sense of understanding of what the family issues are. So, a shoplifting case involving the son may involve other issues. And if an attorney does their job right, I think that understanding develops into a compassion, which develops into really an empathy for the people that we represent. And let me just say here, Attorney DeCapua has done the job right throughout his career. You have before you his academic and his legal credentials. There's nothing that I can add to that. He's an excellent attorney. He knows the law well. And I think probably even a better comment about that, he knows what he doesn't know. And he's not going to be rushing into any decisions that he's not comfortable with. He will take the time, he will do the research, he wants to be fair, and he wants to get it right. In essence, he has the temperament that I see is ideal for a judge. Attorney DeCapua was a bar advocate for many years. And if you're an attorney, you know that you don't do that out of financial aspirations. You do that for a sense of fulfillment, a sense of helping people, for getting, for helping people and getting it done right for people and working hard on their behalf. He has a myriad of experience in civil, small claims, summary process, all of the type of actions that a district court judge needs to be well-versed in. In essence, he has the educational background, he has the legal experience, but I think more significantly, he has the personal core set of values correct, of fairness, of empathy, and for helping others. In short, Mr. Chairman, I feel that he will be an outstanding district court judge, and I wholeheartedly endorse his candidacy.
Thank you very much. Counselors, Counselor DeVane?
Thank you for coming. Your testimony means a lot because it isn't.
Oh, gosh, no.
Like your father's, that's a wonderful story. Tell me now, I am pleased with that he has more. Tell me why you think that's important in his experience that he brings to the court.
Well, you know, as much as we want to think otherwise, really, the primary, the work that you see at the district court level is criminal. And I think that that's the most important area to have the experience in. And what has impressed me about Attorney DeCapua is the fact that he worked as a bar advocate for so long on behalf of people who could not afford to get their own attorneys. And early in my career, during the 1990s, I was doing more criminal work than in the latter part of my career. And I was in court with him a lot. And you know, it's a hustle bustle type thing. You know, cases are moving and things are happening fast. And I was always very, very impressed with the way he handled this case. To be quite frank with you, there are bar advocates who do the work, and there are bar advocates who do the work and care. And Attorney DeCapua fell into that latter category.
No, you know, what I found, and I like the age, I like the experience he brings. You know, you don't have a 40-year-old bringing that to the court. And his counsel has voted for 40-year-olds that have no criminal experience, you know. So, so if you could, you know, just one adjective describing this nominee and what that means bringing it to the court.
I mean, you know, to me, and I think the most important aspect for anybody in public service, for attorneys, for judges, and even the role that I have now, it's really a sense of empathy. You know, we really have to recognize what people are going through. And as a judge, he's going to be looking at three types of people. He's going to be looking at victims and offenders. And both sides require empathy in terms of what these people and their families are going through. He's done that his entire career. I know that he will continue to do that as a judge.
Well, I'm glad you said that word empathy because I've said it over and over. I will vote for anyone if they can, you know, have empathy and compassion. And that's what's lacking in some areas. So your testimony really means a lot because you bring personal and you bring professional, his background. So I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Counselor Junebell?
Thank you, good to see you.
Nice to see you.
How's everything going?
Everything is fine in Milford. Knock on wood.
It's a great town. I've been there a lot through the court system out there. Is Bob Shea still at the assistant?
He is. He's still running the criminal judge.
Man.
Yeah.
What will the court be without him? That's the guy you immediately go to when you walk in the building. What do I do with this case?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Tells you how to handle it. Yeah, he's a super guy.
Yeah.
Good to see you. Thank you for recommending this nominee.
Thank you.
It means a lot to me too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You.
Great. Thank you so much, Attorney Murray. We appreciate your testimony.
Thank you.
Before we move on, I want to introduce the counselors. We have Counselor Robert Juvenville, Counselor Marilyn Petito Devani, Counselor Christopher Iannella. Good morning. How are you? Counselor Eileen Duff, Counselor Terrence Kennedy. And now, to the nominee, Attorney DeCapua. You have family and guests with you today. Would you care to introduce them?
Of course, thank you. Seated behind us, my wife Susan, our children Caitlin and Scott, and a little bit more directly behind me is my mom Joyce.
I'm glad they could be here with you today. And if you have a statement to read to the council, please go ahead.
Council DePaulo, Chairman DePaulo, members of the council, thank you for taking the time to meet with me this morning. I'm humbled to be sitting here, and the enormity of this moment doesn't escape me for a minute. I know you've taken time to read, taken time to hear people call on my behalf, and I'm in this chair, in this room, on these hallowed grounds, and quite frankly, the most important thing to me. It's an interview for the most important job I could ever think of. Don't take it lightly. I don't think about it. I don't think that I would be sitting here if everything I hadn't done hadn't already led me up to this point. I've had the pleasure of having the confidence of the governor, Baker, Lieutenant Governor Polito, and I thank them for nominating me, and I hope that I can show you why they believed in me and that I'm worthy of their choice. I also like to pay special tribute to the governor's chief legal counsel, Robert Ross, the executive director, Lauren Green Petrino, deputy director, Emily Rothier, program coordinator, Katie Babin. Much of their work is done without much glory, and most people don't really appreciate or know the things that they do every day. Thank you. I know you're here. Thank you. Over the past 2 years in this application process, I've experienced many stages, and I've come to understand a lot about how the JNC and the Joint Bar Committee work. They work very hard to read many well-written applications, to interview and consider many worthy applicants, and they have the job of picking those to advance forward. Sometimes their work is unmentioned, and again, I thank them for their work. I'd also like to take a moment to thank Judge Calagione and Attorney Murray. They spoke on my behalf today, and I'm very humbled by the things that they've had to say. I've known them like they said all of my life, and I have continuing and endless gratitude for their support and their friendship. I appear today so much more than what you see, so much more than what you see on paper, or what you've heard from the people who have given testimony. You've all read my background, you know my education, you know the diversity of my practice. Those establish who I am, but they don't alone establish who I am or all that I've done. I'm so much more than that, mostly because of where I come from and how I got. I've always felt that the robe of a judge belonged to someone who could best exemplify the collective character and attributes of a person, not only professionally, but personally. I learned a long time ago that a judge needed to be a good and decent person. Professionally, I've spent 31 years in private practice. I've represented clients in many different capacities, both civil and criminal matters. Stepping into court in 1990 of December was not new to me, though. I tagged along with my father from the time I was about 5 years old. I was in many different courthouses for many different years, as many chances as I could. And at different points in my life, I got the chance to see what was going on in a courthouse. I got the chance to know the staff. I got the chance to see the pride that they had in the courthouses where they presided. That meant a lot, and it meant a lot to me when I got that opportunity myself. A liberal arts degree from Trinity and a law degree from Georgetown were a great foundation for what I was about to accomplish. Being a lawyer was what I always wanted to do. It was just simple. It was just that simple. I never thought about doing anything else. Personally, I have a strong sense of community and family. Every time I'd leave to go back to school, there was always something that drew me back home. And it was that sense of both community and family. There's a short story that I want to tell you, and it's stuck with me forever. I was heading to law school in the summer of 1987, and I visited a doctor for a physical. And he was a family doctor and the kind that would still carry his tool set, make house calls. And he said these words to me, and he said, because he knew I was heading to DC, he knew what was in store, he knew the importance of my next part of my life. He said, no matter where you go, no matter what you do, honor your family, honor your community. It's who you are. Don't ever forget where you came from. And I still get choked up thinking about that because it really means a lot to me to honor my family and to honor my community. I've served in that community, serving on the school committee, coached many youth sports, deeply involved in civic and charitable endeavors, and I tried to help people the best way that I could. But for me, community and family are something that fit together very neatly. My paternal grandparents emigrated to the United States in the early 1900s. Milford was their destination. It was where they would have the next several generations live. We have a strong family, we have a strong community, all of which because they made their decision when they came here without much to raise that family and make them understand their values. As an only child, I had a special bond with my parents, a bond which we still share today. They instilled in me the morals and the values which shaped me. They taught me about life. They were my idol and my inspiration. Having my mother here today is something that we won't ever, it's irreplaceable. My world is not complete, though, without the three other people in this room. It's the center of everything for me. Scott's a JD candidate at Western New England. Caitlin's about to embark, taking the LSATs on Sunday. And we are now beginning to understand what it might be like someday to have 3 attorneys under one roof. We embrace every moment of their career path where they're kind and generous and respectful, and they make us proud every day. I sat next to a young girl in English class in high school. Showing her it wasn't the right time. But our paths crossed again a few years later. She had just become a nurse. I was still in law school. And it was inevitable that our journeys would bring us together. These many years later to this moment, and that journey keeps growing. She's been by my side, particularly during these past 2 years, the ups and downs of knowing what it's like to be an applicant for this process. Her encouragement and support have been my fuel. Her kindness in her career is only a small portion of what she gives to us. I would not be here without all of them. This is who I am. These are the people in my life that make me who I am. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With that, we'll open it to the council for questions. Councilor Jubenville?
Okay, thank you. Let me get out of the way. First of all, I think your witnesses were excellent. And a lot to me. Tom O'Laughlin, I was on the phone last night for about an hour with. I've known him for about 55 years. I first met him a lot younger than that. Mike Walsh, selectman, called. Mr. Antonellis, is it called? Dino Bartolomeo. Yes. So you got a lot of support. You have a wonderful application, and you got a wonderful age to be a judge. Let me just ask you a couple of questions, if I might. I hear the term from candidates here, I'm going to follow the law. You ever hear that?
I've heard people say that.
Do you think that's what a district court judge does?
No. Some of them do, but I'm not sure that that's the best path.
Well, I don't think any of them do.
Be polite.
I'm saying that in a respectful way.
Yes.
In my view, your job isn't to follow the law, it's to interpret the law. You know yourself that you could go into one courtroom with a judge and get a result. You could have the same case with the same questions and facts before another judge and get another opinion. So if every judge followed the law, we wouldn't need an appeals court or SJC. So you interpret the law the best you can on what you think facts are to the law, right? So we want more following the laws. We want you to interpret the law in a good and decent way, in a compassionate way for the people that come before you.
When Attorney Murray used the word empathy, That's a word that stuck with me. People say a lot of times, you know how you feel. And if you don't know how someone feels, don't say that. If you don't know what they're going through, don't say that. You have to understand how they feel because you've seen it, you've experienced it, and then you can say that. But I think the role of a judge is one step beyond that, because with that job comes the power to help people. So not only understanding what they're going through, but being in a position to help them succeed.
It also comes with the power to hurt people. Right? People in jail. Uh, Hopefully that'll be your last response to any issue, or all else has failed.
I wouldn't take that lightly. It would not be something that I would do that I wouldn't give serious and careful thought to. It's a significant event that affects more than just that person.
I was recently looking for a court case in another court, and the clerk told me, I said, can I do it at 2 o'clock, this particular hearing? Appeal from a clerk's hearing. I said, can I do it at 2 o'clock? And the assistant clerk, in a nice way, said, Bob, you can't. Court starts at 9. The judges are at 9. I said, they don't work at 2? Where do they go? They all go home after lunch? I thought this whole pandemic thing brought out the stark reality of, let's stop making everybody pour into our courts at 9 in the morning. And half of them go home an hour later and miss a day's work. It's foolishness. I mean, the Superior Court now has just about, other than trials, which go half days now most of the time, 2 o'clock hearings are motions and other things. I hope it's not going to be that way in the district court, that they just say everybody's got to come back in at 9 o'clock.
I've always struggled with that concept that everybody's there for 9 o'clock, and particularly people who are in private practice. You know, you've maybe got to be in another courthouse. Maybe you've got to be back to take care of something else that's going on, and sometimes just answer the phone.
Well, how many times have you done it? I've done it. All the lawyers are here have done it. You got a couple of cases on, 2 or 3 cases sometimes in the same day. So you go to the first court, you call the other, I'm going to be late, and you call it after the second court. You're constantly calling courts to tell you you're going to be late. If somebody said, look, 2 o'clock on this case for tomorrow, good, I can do the morning court, I can get there at 2. I don't have to call people, but it's like strange for the district court. They just don't seem to want to adopt that.
I agree completely. And, you know, there are so many things that happen in the course of a district court session that it seems like it could be something that we could allow certain arraignments to be at a certain time, for just status conference to be at a certain time, to get people in and out and get on with business.
So the other issue is, I thought, anyway, I was told by some higher-ups that this Zoom situation and these conference calls will be continued for certain events in the court, like pretrial conferences or C&E date, or something where there's no evidence being given, so that somebody doesn't have to miss a day's work and they can go on at the Zoom with their phone and be there. What's your feeling on that? Are you going to continue that aspect of the Zoom?
I think we were forced into technology, maybe one of the last entities that has adopted technology, and being able to hear people when they may have other things to do. I think that's a solid solution, that being able to dial in, to Zoom in. I think it's a fair way but let's get, trials should take place more often, not because they don't have enough time in the day to start and finish it, because they're dealing with other things. And if that's one solution, then I would support it completely.
Speaking of trials, have you ever done a jury waive trial?
Yes.
And what do you do to make the decision on whether or not you jury waive a trial?
That judge is on the list.
Off the list.
That's my phrase, is I know what you mean. Yeah, I mean, I would need to know whether that judge is someone that I would
You'll come. Yeah.
listen. And I'm not looking for anybody to tip their hat. I want to know, is this a judge? Because sometimes, frankly, a jury isn't the right fact finder. in a certain type of.
You know, and I know, there's a percentage of judges who have never put the word not in front of guilty since they've been sitting on the bench. And lawyers know who they are, because we go into a court, and even if it's a strange court, we haven't been in quite a while, you talk to lawyers. First thing about this judge, what do you think?
First thing we do, especially
And,
a visiting judge.
They tell you that, don't jury waive at this judge. They tell you right off the bat.
And I don't want to be that judge that someone would say that about.
Can you imagine going your whole career and nobody ever jury waived with you because they don't trust that you'll be fair?
I don't think I
Bad legacy.
would give anybody that reason to feel that way. That's been my goal.
So if somebody says to you, which I've been asked 100 times in this pandemic, so you're going to put down a trial, what, you're going to have a bench trial or jury trial? I say, I'm going to have a trial. I'll make the decision on the bench that day.
3 years ago, up in the jury session, they were trying to make people stick with that decision. And it was impossible to advise my client what decision to make. Because if we got there and it was someone that we felt comfortable with for the sake of just the informality of not having a jury trial, it could very well have been a change of decision. It's not, I don't see why people would hold anyone's feet to the fire, so to speak.
Well, I don't know why anybody would take that waiver before you go into trial that day. In fact, under that new appeals court case, Commonwealth versus Givo, it is the defendant's right to choose a judge or a jury right up until the time of impanelment. So when your judges say, well, look, you're coming back for a jury waive trial in a month, so I want you to do the waiver. I say, I can't do that, Judge. So then they say, all right, we'll put it down for jury. I put it down for whatever you want. I'll be here ready to go. And
I agree with
What
what
the
you're
city-
saying, and I understand that completely.
do you think we have too many people on probation?
I mean, the other choice is either sending them without any consequence or sending them to the House of Correction or prison. I don't know that that's a better answer. Being on probation is a solution that helps people and helps them to succeed. So, probation departments are
A little bit I disagree with, and I don't have any axe to grind with probation. My daughter's in probation. I don't see much supervision going on anymore. You know, judges make people pay $65 a month for probation supervision. And at hearings I've had with probation officers on the stand, I ask them, what supervision have you given this person? None. You know, give him back his money. That's what he's paying for. I think we could dispose of cases without sending people to jail, certain minor cases, or without putting them on probation, or not putting them on for long periods of time. They're not getting any supervision. They're just paying the money. And most of the people are people that can't afford to pay that kind of money. So it wouldn't be adverse to waiving probation fees if somebody was in a financial strait that they couldn't pay.
How can we put them in a path to succeed if they can't meet their financial responsibilities?
I sometimes get the attitude or the opinion that certain judges think they work for the Department of Revenue. All they do is load up these people with charges, with money that they've got to pay, programs they've got to pay for. And you know, sometimes they're not going to make the payments. They're not going to make it. They can't afford it. And what happens? Well, violate them now. Get a warrant for them. So be kind and compassionate to those who don't have as much as you and I have. You heard about the Judge Gantz's Harvard study on racism. So when you read all of that, the only answer this committee could come up with as to why there's more minorities incarcerated than white people is racism. The only word they could come up with, imagine it. And guess who puts people in jails? Judges. And to me, I think part of the problem, the more I look at it, is the fact that minority people interact with police more than people. Not all the time, but as a percentage. People in minority communities deal with police more. People in affluent white communities. The more interaction, the more times they're charged with a crime, the more times they're arrested for a crime. Now, all of a sudden, they come before a judge and they've got a record. They've committed a crime, so they get sentenced on not only the crime, but because they've had a record.
Which keeps building and building and building.
So I guess I've come to the point in my career where I don't know whether it's something that judge should look at as a record. We've all done it in the court for years. What's the record do?
Flip through the probation record.
I'm getting to think that that's sort of got a racist quality to it, dating back from the court system. It's, punishing somebody, we always say, you do something wrong and you get punished. Once you do your sentence or pay the price. We're all done. Our court system. They reused everything we've done again to punish you worse. So it's just
Have to all be part of that solution, recognizing it from the study. I think our first step, we can all become part of the solution in some way.
Well, we do it one at a time. It's your time now. Let me just read to you a very short paragraph. Perfection, if the judge seeks it, requires a knowledge of the law and faithful application of the law. Diligence and efficiency, unfailing courtesy without sacrifice of firmness and decisiveness, even-handedness, while retaining a jealous regard for the individuality of every person, restraint, eternal restraint, particularly as to both the quality and quantity of speech, courage and strength in the face of criticism, above all, integrity in all of its nuances. That was said by Chief Justice Edward F. Hennessy of our Supreme Judicial Court. It was similar to what the judge said he spoke. So I think you're a great candidate. And, you come from a great town. I'm going to get to know your town a little bit better in the coming years. It's of help. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Jubenville. Councilor Iannella, would you like to ask questions?
I love you, Rusty. 1990 to the present, 30 years, give or take. Private practice. You know what it means to pay the bills, to pay the heating, to pay the rent of a situation. And you own the building, correct?
Yes.
And is it like 3 stories? What was it?
It's an old split-level home that was converted into an office building, so there are several offices in a conference room.
You're a sole practitioner, so do you totally practice by yourself, or do you have other lawyers maybe in the building?
The lawyer's in the building.
Or you're by yourself?
I'm by myself.
And do you have any staff?
No.
You know, I'm just thinking when I got out of law school, it's not so hard to shop all by yourself with your family.
My father was an attorney.
Okay,
Yes.
so way back then, did you go into the him at that point? Or?
It's in the same building. His practice was different than mine. He handled different types of matters. Start.
Okay, because that's important. Yeah, I mean, these days, I mean, you know, the Council Julie was talking about, you know, the municipal attack. To make money, to survive, your families and children. It's tough to be shot in one court. There are oftentimes that maybe you have to be in 2 courts. So my question is, you know, you do a lot of, or you have done a lot of criminal work. You government. The government has an endless amount of money. There's no limit as to the staff for the government. I've always been an advocate. So when you go against the government, if you want to go on vacation with your family and you have a case on, you gotta ask for continuance. Give me a sense of what it's gonna be like when a lawyer comes before you, especially a sole practitioner.
I think it's reasonable to expect that people need to reschedule things. It's just the nature of today's world. And knowing that there may not be another partner behind them who can even step in, particularly on that sole practitioner, I think that's an important part to understand. I've been there. I've had to deal with that. I've gone through that. And I've seen it. I've seen it firsthand. I've experienced it. Not with Judge Calagione, but when continuances were not granted. And I would simply, in the back of my head, say that sometimes people just don't understand what it's like to be working on your own, understand the nature of being a sole practitioner.
So they created, you know, it was less than a year ago, I'm nominating for sitting in that chair. Talking about continuances. You under this hypothetical. Your spouse says to you, hey, whatever your name is, guess what? It's our 25th wedding anniversary. We got a trip planned. It's all excited. What would you do? You were the judge. Thanks for this, folks. He says, I wouldn't agree to the continuance. I go, what? Don't believe it. Well, the spouse should have known his schedule. Are you kidding me? Again, this person was a sole practitioner. How do people do that? So, again, I mean, no one else has said it. I don't want you to be someone I don't think you're gonna be because of that.
It would be among the first things we would say when we would speak to each other. Does this judge know what it's like? And to have been in the trenches, to have been sitting on that side of the rail with your cases stacked up that day, I think that's an important part for any judge who's going to preside in that courtroom to understand.
Yeah, I'll continue with this. You know, Kennedy and Gillibrand will agree. There are some judges, not a lot, but few. They want to continue this. I'll say the case is next week. They finally want to do this, send it to a motion for continuance. You believe it? The judge makes them show up. Are you kidding me? It's not like the courthouse is next door to their home. I'm on the schedule to show up. To me, this is insane.
Completely agree. And when we can do things over the phone, when we can do things over internet, when we can do things over Zoom, these present different options that may not have been available 20 years ago. And I think just something simple, particularly unopposed motions like that to continue.
Sure.
Most of the time they're not, because the Commonwealth doesn't really expect an objection.
In a situation like this, attorney, you know, is not vaccinated, let's say. Either he or she is not vaccinated, or in the alternative, one of his key witnesses or his client, either plaintiff or the defendant, depending on the situation, is permissible. And they want a continuance because they don't feel comfortable going into court. You know, things are getting better. That's great. What do you do in that situation? And then make it easy for you. That's the whole of the question. He says, always, in all these situations, he's saying, someone asking for a continuance, you gotta tell.
I completely agree. I don't see, I mean, these times are not anything that we've had to prepare for, had a chance to get it wrong before we can get it right. And I think we're doing a good job in the court system, getting it right the first time. And I think that if someone isn't well, or they maybe have some compromised immunities that we need to protect, whether it's in a room like this, or whether it's in a courthouse that's a little bit bigger with more people coming in and out, certainly it's just safer for them, their health.
Well, that's good. You're the perfect candidate. And you've done criminal work for a number of years. You've done civil, you've done personal injury, you've done it all. I really like it. I mean, so many people come before us, they're just, this is specialization of so many people. But you have criminal and civil. I think that's going to be good. I'm one of those people who like to give people second, maybe third chance. Whole life, I like to. Yeah. Find seated. What you got on us, if appropriate, rehabilitation versus incarceration, obviously darkening.
Wouldn't limit it to second or third chances. I would say my answer has always been as many chances as it takes to get it right. Help them succeed. And sometimes it may not be the second or third time that they get it right. Sometimes you might have to take it to the sixth time. But certainly other factors like the safety of the community, as long as those aren't truly talking about rehabilitation, perhaps substance or alcohol, I think that's a fair thing to look at and say, whatever we need help. Because a lot of times we don't have anyone helping them.
Totally agree. Now, last question. Judge Charlotte, what's your thoughts on that?
We all do. Very simple that we know, I mean, no.
You went for the judge.
There is one thing that I've said, maybe not to Judge Calagione, but I've said to others about Calagione, is that no matter what decision he made, you always respected it, even if it didn't go your way. And that is something that I admired a lot about him, and something I hope that people could say about me. Yeah, there are judges we stay away from, but sometimes you really don't have that choice. You have to judge in that day, and that's the day of your trial. It's the day of your hearing.
Thank you very much. If you don't have any questions, your witnesses will great. Great to see you. It's a big day. When you come before us next week, 100% county. That's the one.
Thank you, Counsel.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Kennedy?
We had a nice talk on the phone. I would have trouble voting against you because I see a lot of parallels between the nature of your practice and the nature of mine. I've been in practice for 7 more years than you, but basically doing the same thing, a mix of criminal and civil. So I get that you get the things that everybody's talking about. That said, I do have a couple of questions. Recently, in the last 10 days, I received a call from some folks whose family member was on probation in Lawrence Court, flunked 2 breathalyzers, nothing else, 2 breathalyzers. You're paying, which is okay. So I call up his probation officer and I said, what's going on with this? Yeah, he calls me after the hearing, not before. It was that morning. He says he was detained. Okay, so what's he got hanging over his head? He said 18 months. He said, is there any other problems with him? Any other issues? He said, no, he flunked two different days, 2 different breathalyzers. So I said, what are you asking for? He goes, well, I wanted them post. You ever give somebody 18 months for failing 2 breath tests?
Assuming that the charge was.
It's not hypothetical, it's a real case.
What was the charge, the underlying charge?
3rd offense of driving under,
So,
on probation for 1.5 years.
I mean, again, look for opportunities to help someone, to support someone.
No issues with driving, no issues with committing new crimes. 2 breath tests. Instead of paying,
See everything exhausted. Like, the one thing that I didn't hear was daily support. Daily support, the support that,
they're not getting any support from probation. They're getting nothing. Okay? Council Doomville's right. Probation, when I started, was there to help people when Council Doomville started and when Council Iannello was over in the West Roxbury District Court doing bar advocate work. Probation helped people. They got involved. They got them in programs. They did things. That's not what happened. That's not what's happening today. It's all about covering your backside and making sure the paperwork's in order. So that if something happens, your butt's not on the line. That's what I'm seeing more and more of. And it's sad because they're not. They're not supervising people. They're supervising people to the extent that they're watching to see if they flunk that breath test. And by the way, I have a huge problem with these breath tests, with these scrams they're putting everybody on. One of the things we've learned over the last 8 or 9 years, and I'm sure you've dealt with it, is the breathalyzers that we're using at police stations are turning out to be junk, okay? And the Office of Alcohol Testing is and continues to be a complete disaster in terms of trying to maintain those machines, certify those machines. It's just a disaster. You know that. We all know it's been in the newspaper. These other scrams, nobody's checking, from what I can tell. Nobody's even looking to see if they're not certified. They're not. We don't know if they're calibrated. And based on those alone, we're sending people to jail. I had a guy in Quincy who wanted to scram. They came to his house an hour later, put him in the custody, took him to the police station, gave him a breathalyzer there, read 0. He was hauled to moving court where the case was out of, missed the day's pay, and they said, okay, it was 0, okay, let him go. He was locked up over one of these. So I'm gonna ask you that question again. That scram that client from Lawrence District Court with 2 breathalyzers, nothing else, for a year and a half on probation, nothing else. You're gonna send that guy for 18 months?
No, because my concern is when I talk about the daily support, I don't mean from probation, but I mean programs that might help people with a problem. That sending them to jail, if he's flunked 2 breathalyzers, there's a problem.
Well, okay, so you detain him for a couple of weeks. You give him a slap. I don't even think you should do that, but you give him a slap, and then you put him back on probation, right?
I want to see him get help. I want to see him.
Well, presumably you put him on probation so he's getting help. Isn't that the point of probation?
But he has to help himself. And what I'm saying is that he can enroll himself into daily support. There are mechanisms, there are places out there where they can help themselves.
We know people slip. Right? They're doing good, they slip, they get back on track, right? 2 breathalyzers, is that a slip? Nothing else in a year and a half.
I don't see that.
You don't see what?
That's a slip.
You don't see it as a slip?
Sorry, I don't see that that's a slip that's worthy of going to be sent for the 18 months.
Probation these days seems, and I have a lot of friends that are probation officers, have for many years, many dedicated probation officers, but it seems that the mentality nowadays seems to be all about the paperwork and closing a file, even if it means sending someone to jail, because then they don't have to supervise them anymore. That's what it seems to be turning into. Anyway, I like Councilor Jubenville and other councils, I'm sure, got calls from half of the town of Milford.
Indeed.
We often get calls from judges, we often get calls from other lawyers. We're getting calls from everybody from the head of the Board of Selectmen to the custodian to everybody.
You know,
Exactly. You know,
it was serious.
I can assure you, if it was up to the town of Milford, you'd already have your robe on and be hearing cases. But yeah, I think you're a terrific candidate. I will be voting for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Kennedy. Councilor Duff?
You. It's several things. One, this is a great experience for you two being in law school, because you're hearing some real-time issues that some of the litigators face. And when Jubenville is finished with him, I want to talk to him. Even though I know this is, I do want to thank you for acknowledging this is a job interview. We are very blessed to have a state representative here today, because what people don't understand what we do. I actually read something in State House News yesterday that made my blood boil, saying the Governor's Council is not doing anything about this, when it is indeed something we have no power over. I'm deciding whether to make it. But one of the things that you guys can do that we can't is allocate money to our courts. We are one of the 3 branches of government. We get about 2.7% of the budget. And we need probation reform. These men who sit with me deal with it on a daily basis. We have folks who are trying to turn their lives around. They're giving tasks with probation officers which are almost impossible to achieve and reach. They're paying money, and no one can tell us where this money goes. Nobody knows where it goes. So why are they even paying money? And so thank you, Representative, for being here as a witness, but please do really hear us and bring this message back to your chamber, that this is a real, very, very serious issue. And it is indeed, as you have mentioned, Attorney, a public safety issue. And it is one of the reasons, and I'm digressing from you, but it is one of the reasons why my hair has been on fire about the parole board, is because we are literally having prisoners right now making the choice. And I literally got a letter from somebody 2 weeks ago in prison saying, I have now chosen to finish my sentence rather than be humiliated before that parole board again where they try to retry me. Not having people on parole is a huge public safety issue. We want them on parole. We want them, if they're gonna be on probation, to get support. We don't want them to be chastised. They are not children. They need help and they need support. But we can't ask them to pay money they don't have, because we send them to prison or jail and they come out and they can't get a job. And it's a really very serious problem. And as I told the attorney before us today, who was here for his job interview, you know, the truth of the matter is nobody in this building, we all give a lot of a lip and talk, but nobody really seems to care about drug addicts and addicts and people in prison and jail. We say all the right things, but the money is not there. So please help us, you know, help our constituents and do the right thing, but we can't do it without money. I had lunch with a group of judges yesterday, and every single one of them said to me, we need money, we need funding, we need staff, we need things. We don't have it. One of them didn't even have a color copier. They had to go down the street. One of our branches of government, and they don't have money. The judiciary is not in the business of making money. Let us be very clear. We are in the business of administering justice. That's our job. So that's my speech to you. Unexpected, you probably weren't expecting to get. We always warn the reps and senators when you come in here. To you, dear sir, thank you for some of the things you've said. We've had wonderful conversations. We, I think, agree on many, many issues. But what I would like to ask you is, what do you see, after all the conversations you've had with so many of us, in your deep practice that you've had, what do you see as practically some of the biggest issues facing a district court judge today?
Having to play that role in supporting someone to succeed. The epidemic of substance abuse that we see, and no end in sight for that. Deal with people who are dying. We deal with people who are addicted because of that addiction. I think that there's an opportunity for someone in the middle, like the courthouse, to point them in the right direction, to pick them up off the ground, lend them a hand, rather than casting aspersions when they're down. That's been the way I've always approached most things. Most clients have had problems on nature, and it's the biggest. It's the biggest factor that court faces, because that's an important moment in their life where the consequences are real. Although there are some who don't care about the consequences, it's an opportunity to help them care, make them care, even when there's no effort on their own. I think pointing them in the right direction, pointing out sometimes the difference between good and bad, making healthy decisions at the right times of their life, those factors.
Well, you really hit on some things, because some people who have fallen into the rabbit hole of addiction, you know, no one wakes up and says, I think I'm gonna become a heroin addict, or gee, I'd like to be an alcoholic. I mean, these are no one's life ambitions, right? These are things that happen to us because of our genetic makeup or because of, you know, different experiences that may have impacted us. People may be self-medicating, whatever. But I think what I'm hearing you say, and correct me if I'm not right, because I don't mind not being right, is the lack of services that we have. Because as a judge, and this goes back to one of my other issues that I won't go into, is that you need to know what's in your toolkit, you know, you're gonna be in, right? You need to know what are the local services that can help you. And having those services funded matters, you know. People complain about DCF, all these children, you know, and it's horrific things that happen. But when you're paying people $15 an hour and they have a caseload that's for 3 people, stuff happens. And it's not those folks we should be blaming, it's us. We're the elected officials. We're the people that control the ballot, you know, the money. We should blame ourselves. The buck stops in this building. You know, it's real nice to point to the $15 an hour social worker, but, you know, it's not fair. And it's, you know, we need to do better as electeds. And I've told you that I feel this very passionately, that those of us who are privileged enough to sit in this building as an elected official, you already as an attorney, you young folks who will be attorneys, you as a former judge, you as a potential judge, we are and should be held to a higher standard. It is incumbent upon us. We have been entrusted for something higher and better, and we really need to work and dig deep every single day. It's not about what you can do for me. It's about how can we rise together. Are you familiar with the Angel program at all? Do you know it? I encourage you to learn a little bit about it. It's a program that we started in Gloucester 5 years ago. Our police chief, very conservative Republican, who realized we're not going to arrest our way out of this problem, this drug and alcohol problem. And so the deal in our community is, and it's become a nationwide program. There's a whole lot of different parts of it now. But if you are an addict and you come to the police station and turn yourself in, and if you drugs or alcohol and you turn it in, you will not be arrested. You will be assigned an angel. It's almost like a sponsor, but it's a little bit more than that, where they will get you a bed. They will find you a bed within 4 hours. And you will go through the recovery process. And when you fall, because you will fall, that angel will be there to pick you up, take you back. And all these folks are trained, and they're volunteers. And our recidivism rate is much lower than it has been anywhere else. It's a really, really fantastic program. It's different. Some people didn't agree with it when it started, but because we are a fishing community, because we live on an island, we have some issues that are a little bit different. The fishing industry has been terribly impacted by the economy in the past 20 years. And, you know, one of the dirty secrets people don't want to talk about is heroin gets smuggled in on fishing boats. And it makes its way into our communities. And again, no one ever plans it's going to happen, but it happens. A couple of years ago, the night before the election, I came upon a body, somebody who had overdosed. And, you know, stopped, called the police. They came, and it was really fantastic, not fantastic, but heartwarming to see how our officers treated that person. Because I didn't know if they were dead. And I've worked with addicts. I didn't know if this person was dead. When our police officers came and how they treated that person with compassion, how they administered the Narcan, how they did it was how we can do it. And there were many stories of people who get arrested on the North Shore, and the cops will say to them, "Why are you being so obvious?" And they said, "I'm trying to get to Gloucester," because they know they can get help, because a lot of people want help. So thank you for acknowledging that. How about, you know, we talked about the gay, lesbian community, transgender people, transgender kids. Again, I understand this is a difficult issue for many people to get their heads around, but it's a real issue, it's a real thing. And have you any experience working with those communities?
Actually, I was thinking about it on the way in last night and to work, way home last night. And because I drove by the house, soon after, I had represented a couple who owned a house. And as soon as they were allowed to marry each other, one of the first steps that they took was to come to see me to transfer a title to them as husband, as wife and wife, as tenants by the entirety. And it was a big moment for them, and I was a proud moment for me to share with them. So that's part of the exposure. It's a happy moment, and I do certainly understand that there are more complex issues that they face than just something like that. But that is just a short story of that.
I do have to say, I think our courts, our judges and our chiefs are really doing an excellent job at educating, teaching people about correct pronouns, teaching them about somebody might want different clothing that they feel more, they identify with. At the end of the day, it's about keeping people safe and making sure if they're going to prison or they're going to jail, they're going to be safe. Again, same with special needs people, whether they have a mental disability or a physical disability, it's about keeping them safe. It does not absolve someone of a crime. You know, I had a special needs sister. Believe me, I'm sure she picked up a lot of candy bars in her because she had a sweet tooth. But, you know, it doesn't absolve you of doing something if you do something that's serious enough to get you in jail. But you do have to address these things with a knowledge and a compassion. And again, our court officers are outstanding in these ways of often guiding people of knowing or being able to recognize certain things. You know, I tell people, my sister had Down syndrome. If she walked into a room, you would know she had a disability. If someone's on the spectrum somewhere, or one of the other myriad things that sort of falls under that category, even their attorney may not know they have a special need until you get into the courtroom. And they may not behave in what we consider appropriately. And so the judges have to be, you know, as I said to you when we spoke, it's a harder job than anyone thinks. You have to be priest, rabbi, social worker, doctor, mother, father, teacher, all these things. You know, it's not Mayberry RFD. It's not what it used to be. It's a very stressful job. And I know I'm telling you things you know, but I want the public to really understand these are difficult positions, and it can be difficult on your family because at some point, and I think you may have had this discussion at home, you may make a decision that people don't like. You may let somebody go who had 2 breathalyzers and they may kill someone. Those are big consequences. It's a very heavy burden if it falls on your shoulders. Have you thought at all, we spoke a little bit about using your experience as an attorney, as a person in the community, because you've played many roles as a dad, as a coach, as a father, as a son, of creative sentencing?
Stuck to a strict rule is an impossible task. I've always tried to think outside of the box and be more creative, and I know that there are diversion programs out there. We're given the opportunity, I'd love to participate in creating some of those programs and finding different ways for people to succeed. You know, it could be something as simple as, common as substance or alcohol, maybe more even something like driving or right, because we have people that drive when they shouldn't drive, whether they've never had a license or maybe have it taken away. There are ways of doing things that not within the confines of what traditional thinking is, and I would love the opportunity to play a role in that.
I think you might be one of the people who sat in that seat that will actually be creative. And I hope that you are, because I think there is a lot of possibility. I don't know what it is. I'm not a judge. I don't want to be a judge. I think you're all crazy to even want to do this. But I think there are really interesting, you and I talked a little bit about, you know, when I worked with addictions and when I'm the chaplain and when I was on rotation in the NICU, you know, if you hold a baby that's going through withdrawal, wife's a nurse, you've probably seen it. in no way, I mean, that takes you to your core. Those are experiences you can give somebody without sending them to jail. You know, there's only so much trash you can pick up, but there are other things that we can do that maybe open people's minds. I could talk to you for a very long time about these things. I've enjoyed talking to you. I think you have a fine background. I have to say to your mom, you have such a beautiful name. And nobody knows it, but I'm half Italian, so I absolutely appreciate that name. It's a beautiful name with a wonderful meaning. Thank you for your application. I hope you do get to serve the Commonwealth on the bench. It is a big job, and I think that you understand it. You have a little bit of sage wisdom about you. I think you're, as you are younger than I am. But thank you. And thank you for your time here today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Counselor Duff. Counselor Hurley.
Yes. It's nice to see you in person.
See you.
We traded phone calls a number of times. I talked to Dino, all the other people that called me. I have never, in the time that I've been here, had anybody who, you might get calls from, judges or reps or senators or whatever. Just the common, ordinary people. And the best news of all, whether you know it or not, you are loved
I do know that.
and respected. Skip.
Yes.
We talked, you have an incredible resume. You're concerned about public safety, you're concerned about victims of violent crimes and also domestic abuse and domestic violence. A shout out to my colleague, former colleague, Bob Calgione. He did call me and I said, okay, Bob, I'll see you. You don't have to worry. I read your application and it's excellent. You are the everyman that we love to see get on the bench. And I liked your answers a lot. And I think you're going to be a judge who brings empathy and humanity to the job. So I thank you for the privilege of talking to you. And I've been asked a lot of questions. You come up with the right answers.
Appreciate it.
And the best thing of all is when you said, I can't talk to you this afternoon because I'm bringing my mom to the doctor. That's what clinched it. Son.
Thank you.
Proud of them. Your kids can be proud of your dad, and I know that you're proud of your husband. So thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Ferrera.
Thank you. From what I read and what I've heard, you are the go-to guy. I spent 30 years in law enforcement. I'm a lawyer, and just this morning I got like 5 phone calls. Can you help me with this? Help me with that. Help me with this. Help me with that. Right? A myriad of things, and you're that guy. So I appreciate all your community involvement. The things that you've done are amazing with youth sports and the Lions Club and school committee, and the list goes on, and that speaks volumes to me about what kind of person you are. I love your resume, criminal, civil, real estate stuff. I do agree with my colleague, Councilor Duff, about police having empathy, for sure, and I think it's a great program that she talked about. I do have one question, and it just irks me, because I was a cop. I retired 7 years ago after 30 years on the job, 9 as chief. And when I see, in the news last night that these 3 Boston cops get shot, and I see the politicians flock to the hospital, and I see their actions, and their actions disturb me at times. So I'd like to know your thoughts about how it is that we elect representatives, we elect senators, so 200 people in this building make laws. And then someone gets elected to be a district attorney and says, I'm not going to enforce 17 of those laws, ever. And I wonder, the guy that shot the cop, should he be in jail? I don't know. I know he just got out of jail. But do you agree, you have any thoughts on that? And do you agree that some people just have to go to jail?
Second part of the question, yes.
Well, the first part, okay, thank you. All right, we'll go to the second part first.
As you run through some of the thoughts, the first reaction is, and I know that I would share this with my son who's gone through this as well, that we do have that difference between legislation, case law, and common law. And recognizing that sometimes the decisions that come out of the court may not necessarily be the same decisions that would come out of this building. And that's the beauty of it, that they both would have the opportunity to see things their own way and then ultimately be determined, you know, in appeals or appellate level. So if we were asking that global question about sometimes the laws that are created versus the laws that are applied in a courtroom, I just look at, I think that's part of our democracy. We have that breakdown between the types of laws that there are out there and which ones are that they're in.
You come across someone that knows the difference between a bad guy and a good guy that had a bad day or just offended a criminal statute and is really a good person overall, I think you can make that determination.
It's not unusual to see people in a courtroom, and most of them, it's their first time there. I mean, there are some that are the frequent flyers, we know that. But the ones that are there, they deserve the same attention as the ones that have been there many times. And, you know, the courthouse should be that environment where they're treated equally, they're treated fairly, have an opportunity to have their cases heard and be, you know, safe and secure in that building. And someone like a judge be impartial with their case. And I think that's an important role that a judge could.
Well, you know that once you get this job, and I'm sure you are from what I hear today, that you can never be fired for any decision you make.
I understand that.
The only way you can ever be fired is if you do something really bad and the governor wants to undo you. And then you come to us, which hasn't been done in 50 years. So, but not for a decision of holding someone or not holding someone or not guilty or guilty. That's the beauty of our system.
I wouldn't want that to guide my decision. I would want to, as a phrase we've heard a couple times today, try to get it right. And there are things which we can do every day to help get it right, and there are things that we can help people do to get it right. And said it, and I don't mean to repeat myself, but if we need to do it over, let's do it over. Let's do our best to just keep trying to get it right. You know, the baseball analogy that I mentioned when I was speaking with the governor, we learned a lot in your batting average that 3 times out of 10 is pretty good. 7 times you've failed. And what matters is that when you get up to the 11th at bat, it's all starting fresh. And, you know, we look at people who fail, whether it's a sport or whether it's in a jail cell, and looking at the way they fail and then the way that they approach that failure is an important aspect of their next at bat.
And if you're a cop, what do you expect at a bat? If you're a police officer, what do you expect it to bat? I'll give you the answer. It's 1,000. Do it right every time, right? Every single time.
It's easy for them to do the right thing every time.
Right.
And to protect the people that are out there, and even if ultimately they're wrong. I had a case this summer. It was a case that it was operating under the influence, and I spoke to the officer after the case was over. It was his first trial. It was one of his first arrests. And I walked up to him, I said, everything you did right. Everything you said today, you did it right. Don't let this not guilty mean anything to you, because you did a very nice job. You made a decision that night that you felt was justified. And he really appreciated that, and I felt that it was the right thing to speak to him that way, because I recognized that he was so young and so new.
Well, good for you. You know, I've arrested hundreds of people in my life. I've also defended people now that I've been retired for 7 years. And I try to explain that a cop can do everything perfectly right, have probable cause, more likely than not, and still the guy not be found guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, and that's okay. That's a system. So it doesn't. I'm glad you were nice to the police officer. So, you know, my message to you after, you know, the day after the cops get shot is also as empathetic and as compassionate as everyone wants you to be. Don't be afraid to hold the bad guy in jail as well.
I've had those conversations too. I understand that. It's not something I would take lightly. Yeah.
You have my vote and support next week. I think you're going to be a good judge. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Ferrera. Counselor Devane.
Oh, I don't want to lose my position, always call last.
See you too, Council.
You know, I always ask the nominees,
2:50, so I'm gonna get a quick lunch. What time you have flight?
I always ask the nominees, the journey that brought you here. So, when you went before the Judicial Nominating Commission, the JNC, there are 21 attorneys that every governor has some responsibility. They have the responsibility to choose who is going to hire this, who is going to be released. So it's incumbent that those 21 people be there at your hearing.
It's just in the middle of the pandemic. Chairman was present, and one other person present, and 9 were on Zoom.
So there was many who voted, never saw you, never talked to you, never called you. Kind of position. And I'm not pointing you out. I want people out there to know this JNC is not doing your job. Because there was a chair years ago, say, when he sat down those 21 attorneys, he said to them, if you don't attend the hearing, you don't vote on the nominee. That's just absurd. I don't trust that as a governor's counselor. I have little authority. I only vote yes or no. I don't know how many were interviewed or any of that. People don't know that. And the other thing is, you know, I've been asking for years legislators to increase the budget for the 1.5%. We need one drug treatment centers. Talked about it. I've never wanted to go to one of the drugs. I have 2 friends. Lost their only sons to overdose, and so I know that I can't do anything about it. I can't vote for that. And it seems like, oh, they vote on things for drug, concerning drugs, but where do we give the treatment? These are not criminals. These are just, I don't know how they got addicted, but there's not long-term. So I think that's the biggest problem, and I know that you have said that. And I just want to say that I am so happy that you've got your family here. In over 60 years, we've had two nominees that the district council is serving the hearing told them not to bring family. And there was Mr. Flaherty, whose wife was here all by herself, in the lobby, waiting for the hearing to be over to drive her home. I wrote him a letter apologizing. And I wrote a letter to Brian Walsh, too. This is the most important day of your life, except getting married, having children, to share it with your family. And they didn't have the opportunity to share it with their family. We have been meeting all through the pandemic very carefully, because the nominee ensures that the people coming in are safe, they're vaccinated, and they are. And we haven't had one person, we have not one report that anyone has got sick. So this is something new. And I'll tell you, when I'm presiding, it's going to be family, and I have done it. So I'm just so pleased to see you all. The other thing is I wanted to say is that I can identify with you. I'm first generation American. And my parents came at different times, Italian immigrants. And my dad was a lot older than your mom and dad. And we can't believe the discrimination he got. And I'm sure that you people went through that. So you come here. I'm so proud of you to be here. The other thing has nothing to do with anything, but I have a daughter, Susan, so I love her name. Has nothing to do with my vote. Let's talk about, first of all, I like your age. You have the life experience that you're bringing to the court, your compassion, your empathy. We don't often see that in a 40-year-old. This council voted about a month ago for a 40-year-old who was one of 13 um, 13 solicitors in a city hall, assistant solicitors in the sheriff's office. And that's it. And he went to the most criminal, it has the most criminal cases in Worcester. And he never saw one. And that's why it's so important that we have age. It's nice to have a little, going that way. And I keep saying to the JNC, they discriminate against people in their 50s. Because the other thing that I see in you that I don't see in 40-year-olds, all of your contributions to your home, to your community. And they don't have time for that, but you do. And you've been a coach, and it's been said, you've been a coach, you served on the school committee, town meeting, that takes time. All of those things that you have done, I don't see in someone 40 years old. And you know what? We need you on the court because I always say it, I won't vote for anyone who doesn't have compassion and empathy, and you certainly have it. Now, let's talk about, when you have, okay, I love 75% criminal. I love it. And I'll tell you why. Because I believe that if a lawyer becomes a judge and never had a criminal case, he would be timid. He'd have no experience on how to deal with someone that has a criminal case before him. And that's important. You have to have that ability. Now, let's talk about on the civil side. So if you have a personal case and it has to involve discovery. Now, what's your philosophy about discovery in these civil matters? A personal, like, let's say a personal, someone gets in an accident or in a car accident and who's responsible or whatever. How does that fit in with your philosophy using discovery?
So discovery under our rules is nearly automatic as far as having it resolved within a certain time frame once the case is started in the district court particularly. What would happen is, I think maybe tension might occur when people don't want to answer questions. And they don't want to produce certain documents, or they don't want to sit for a deposition. And they would need a judge to sit in to either compel or to, I think, and I was actually in court a couple of weeks ago listening to the parties entirely debate whether certain medical records needed to be produced. Because in order for those depositions to take place, the medical records needed to be produced. But the response was that they wouldn't agree to produce the records until they knew what the deposition would be about, because they felt as though there were too many unrelated things in that person's medical history. And so if the injury is the soft tissue, neck or back injury from a car accident, and you're looking for something that might have involved something more personal than that, I certainly think that's not necessarily relevant until someone could make a case that there is relevancy between that medical condition and these damages in this personal injury case. So I would want someone to make a compelling argument that those kinds of things need to be produced, or certain witnesses needed to be produced. District court is probably not the best place for a personal injury case. think people are better served not spending their time in court on personal injuries, frankly. I think they get more done on their own, and I think they get more done if they use mediation or arbitrate. I don't think we have enough time as a court system to listen to all these cases. There was a time when having a case was a good negotiating tool. Okay, let's go to trial. That was a great tool to force someone to come to an amicable settlement. Those days don't exist. There's not enough time in the day for the number of kinds of cases that the district court sees. If there were more courthouses, I wish there were more judges, I wish there were more courtrooms. It's just not.
I mean, I'm gonna have to, Counselor, I need to interrupt for the Lieutenant Governor arriving for assembly. Thank you.
So stick around or are you breaking for lunch?
No, please stick around. We'll have assembly and we'll continue.
You could sit right over, sit in the governor's seat.
Stretch your legs in the antechamber, wherever you like.
Hey, me too. Yeah.
It's
For the rest, How's your flight?
Good, good.
a beautiful name.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Call our assembly to order and ask Councilor DiPaolo to lead us in prayer and pledge today.
Thank you. Today I offer prayers of gratitude for all those whose commitment to science has given us a tool to battle this pandemic, and a prayer that our friends, neighbors, and family will take advantage of the tools available to them to help protect themselves and our community.
Amen. Amen.
Allegiance to the flag
Of the United
States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, a nation under God,
indivisible.
liberty and justice for all.
Bless our veterans.
Thank you, Mary.
It is Marine 246th.
Yes, it is.
A birthday for our Marines and a beautiful week to honor our veterans. All right, I recognize Councilor Kennedy for a motion to record advice and consent for the financial warrant.
So moved, Governor.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I recognize Councilor Duff for a motion to record advice and consent for the pending list of notaries, public, and justices of the peace.
So moved, Governor.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I recognize Councilor Jubenville for a motion to record advice and consent for the appointment of Maureen S. Flaherty to the position of Associate Justice of the Boston Municipal Court.
I so make that motion.
Second.
Pleasure.
There's a motion and a second.
I just want to say that this is the type of people that we want on the bench. She brings not only the experience and her qualifications, but age, and that brings life experience. So I can't say that enough. I'm being redundant, but she's great.
Let's hear it for age.
Okay, we may begin the roll call.
Yes.
Councilor Iannella,
Yes.
Councilor Duff,
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor DePaolo,
Yes.
Councilor Curley,
Yes.
Yes.
Councilor Jubenville.
Yay.
Thank you. I recognize Councilor Devaney for a motion to record advice and consent for the appointment of Catherine H. Ham to the position of Associate Justice of the Superior Court.
There's not enough words to say about Attorney Ham. I had the privilege of presiding over her hearing for district court. And now, rightfully so, she's earned it. She's going to the Superior Court. And I talk on about compassion and empathy. And I just want to tell you, Lieutenant Governor, I could tell you many stories about her. I know her so well now because I've met her for hours and hours. But I asked her if she's followed up on clients that she's had, and we talked in depth about the different ones. And one of them really touched my heart. And she told me that she is working right now, really helping, trying to get a position for this young woman, 22 years old. And she represented her when she was 15 years old. And she was raped by her father and her stepfather for years. So she has gone through all of the trauma of this girl and is still helping. That's what we need in the court. So I could tell you other stories about her, but she's wonderful. And then I want to say, you know, she has the age, she has the qualifications. She's had a lot of criminal cases too. Now, what I see is, and I'm trying to get through, this is the age, this is what we need to have on the bench. This council voted for someone to go to the Superior Court, right to the Superior Court. 6 cases in 21 years in the Superior Court. This is what we need. And I can't say enough about, she came to this country when she was 10 years old from Vietnam. I could cry knowing her history. The funny thing was, when she came, and I was to preside over her again, she said, my mother and father couldn't come because they're in Vietnam visiting my grandfather, 104 years old. So, you know, it's just amazing, her whole history of her family. And it truly is the American dream, what she has done. So I could go on and bore you all to death, but I'm very proud to be voting for her again.
Second.
I just,
We have a motion and a second. Yes, Counselor Duff.
of correction, she is not from Vietnam, she's from Korea. And hear it for youth because she's on the younger side. Thank you. Was not. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We may begin the roll call.
Counselor Ioneller,
Yes.
Counselor Duff,
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy,
Yes.
Counselor Jubal,
Yes.
Counselor DePiero. Yes.
Thank you. I recognize Counselor Jubenville for a motion to record advice and consent for the appointment of Brian K. Walsh to the position of Associate Justice of the District Court.
So moved.
Second discussion.
Motion and a second. Counselor DeBanne.
Wonderful appointment, and I got a lot of calls, but one in particular that really touched my heart was from Representative Kevin Honan, and they grew up together in Brighton, and he told me a lot of stories about him. So, you know, one thing to say, he's qualified, he's experienced, he's a good guy. Okay, thank you.
Counselor Jubenville.
Quickly. I think he's a great candidate. I think you hit the hat trick with these three nominees. They're all excellent. This particular nominee had the blessings of former Lieutenant Governor and Attorney General and member of this governor's council, Frank Bellotti. And with his experience and knowledge, it's a pretty good bet that that'll be great. Thank you.
Thank you. We begin the roll call.
Counselor Duff,
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy,
Yes.
Counselor Paulo,
Yes.
Counselor Rowley,
Yes.
Yes.
Counselor DePiero, Counselor
Yes.
Okay, that concludes our business today, and in honor of our veterans, we will adjourn our assembly.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor.
Thank you. Facebook the other day, I sent it to my
Somebody who,
2016
I lived in
MJ O'Connor's.
she said is not even possible.
She knows. I know.